This morning I got into an argument with a streamer because she was busting in guys on Duty Fighter T10 that they are wasting her time since he didn't know to fight. Oh joy. I mean, I kind of do the same sort of thing, but I mean, I don't really call anybody out. I just get really frustrated when people keep screwing up the same stuff as opposed to... But that's just me. I mean, I get frustrated too. I mean, everyone gets frustrated, but it's like... I told her that it's usually Duty Finder and Farm Party. Yeah, and I agree. I completely agree. If you're in a Duty Finder... Alright. If you're in a Duty Finder, you need to... It's like... Duty Finder is simply for learning to fight and trying to figure it out. Hold on. I'm having trouble to hear myself think. Like if you go into a Party Finder or Farm Party, there is kind of an expectation of that, unless noted otherwise, it's either going to be, unless noted, it's probably going to be a farm or maybe even a clear. I mean, if someone says in a party finder that says, hey, this is a clear party, people are learning, people are trying to figure it out, join if you want to help, but don't lose your shit if, you know, we fail. When it's a farm party, there's an expectation that you guys are going to, like, one-shot it. Everyone knows what they're doing, knows what they're supposed to do, and they're ready to go. Basically, you shouldn't have to teach anybody anything. You know, maybe there might be some hiccups here and there for whatever reason. Maybe tank loses threat or something, or maybe there's a bad passing, or something like that. Something along those lines. You know, if it's a farm, that's how it needs to be. If it's a clear, then people need to learn, then that's something. Okay, if it's Duty Finder, I use Duty Finder a lot trying to figure out certain mechanics to fights. I don't like watching videos. I don't like, you know, reading guides. I like seeing the fights. I like seeing the fight and actually actively participating in it. You know, it's like there's one thing to see a landslide. It's another thing to actually dodge it. So you're like, because in your brain, you know, when you're looking at something in the third person, when you see something from a spectator position, you see things a lot more clearly. That's why people have like trouble, like I would say in life in general, is because every time they're in first person, they're like emotionally or physically involved in the action. Every time they're physically or mentally involved in whatever situation they're in, it's hard to see things clear. But when you watch a video or read the guide, it makes sense. You're like, okay, I can do this. Like, I understand. You have this idea that you can pull this off, but then when you actively try to do it, it's something different. I mean, think of any exercise you've ever done. Think about, you know, playing a sport. You know, it's one thing to see someone dribble a basketball. It's another thing to actually try to dribble a basketball. Or it's one thing to see a person do a deadlift. See a deadlift in a weight room, but it's another thing to actually try and do a deadlift, because, you know, people who do deadlifts, I mean, if you fuck that thing up, you're gonna screw yourself up. You're gonna hurt yourself. So, but when you watch someone do it, you're like, oh, okay, I can do that. There's no problem. And then you try to do it, next thing you know, you're on your back, wallowing in pain because you fucked up. So, and I feel that's the same kind of thing. So, I mean, when you go into a Duty Finder, there's not much expectation, or there shouldn't be much of an expectation that you're actually going to clear it. You might get lucky, but, you know, having the expectation in your head that a Duty Finder, that you're grouping up with a bunch of random people of varying skill sets and you're expecting a farm is just simply insanity. And it's just like, I mean, any person who has that kind of notion that, you know, you're gonna come into my Duty Finder, I expect you to know what you're doing. No, that's what Duty Finder, that's what Party Finder is for. You put a condition that says this is a clear, people need to learn, people are going to figure it out, and it's going to be difficult. People are going to fuck up. That's the way it is. If it's a farm, then yes, I understand that attitude. Yes, you go into a farm, you expect people to be able to pull it off, you know, maybe some hiccups aside, but like, maybe after getting the wrinkles taken care of, it should be no big deal. So, if a streamer or any player whatsoever, if any player is sitting there losing their shit over the fact that it's like, if somebody is actively losing their shit over a duty finder, then they got their own problems. Because there's going to be people with varying skill sets in that thing. There's going to be varying people of different abilities and experiences that, you know, it's to be expected that shit might get fucked up. In a farm, you have an expectation, or you have the expectation that this is going to actually work the way it should, and mechanics are going to be done the way it should be. You know, case in point, I was actually really upset in that that T9 you guys saw me do. You know, I got really upset when I was in T9. That T9 I did because we had 6 of 8. We had 2 people who either A, didn't know the fight or something. And now it's like, and I can understand from that point of view that those 2 people may not know what they're doing. I mean, that Scholar hit us with lightning like 3 times. But then when people, like, in my own group and the people I know who know how to do a fight are making mistakes, I got upset. Like when Kaiser hit us with lightning that one time, or when Kaiser stopped healing. You know, it's like, you know, I got upset and I said this is a waste of my time, not so much because of the skill set that was involved, is that because we were in there, we weren't actively trying to make progress, or we were making progress and then we stopped. And I was like, alright, I need to get out of here because this is not going to happen. Steps of Fate, or Fate, whatever the hell it's called. That, unfortunately, has a very bad distinction has a really shitty distinction that people kind of need to know what they're doing. But then, you need to go, yeah, you're going to go into it the first time as a duty finder, obviously. That's like, that's what's going to happen. You're going to go into it as a duty finder. And not everyone's going to know what to do because Steps of Faith is kind of odd. It's kind of weird. It's an oddity. I mean, you're using siege weapons, you're doing DPS, you have a shit ton of ads coming at your face, it's ridiculous. And, you know, the fact that I heard yesterday that Tara yesterday informed me that people were going into Steps of Faith and fucking people over. And I just kind of considered it as a sort of as griefing. And I was like, that's pretty fucked up. You know, and it's because, like, oh, you know, these guys are not going to get it, so therefore I'm going to impede. It's like, alright, if they're not going to be able to do it themselves, fine. But don't sit there and be a dick and go in there and impede on their progress. Because that's fucked up. You know, that's actively preventing somebody to do something. You know, that's way beyond, you know, pulling hunts early or something. You are actively hindering a person's progression in a video game. Just because you have this attitude that people are not going to get it. And it's like, you know, and I really encourage people to go into a fight, duty finder it, practice it, try to figure it out, you know, something. You know, go in there and actively try to figure it out. And it's, you know, because that's why I always do. Like when, here's a really good example. When Garuda EX came out, okay, I went in, I was like, yo, I'm going to go into Garuda Extreme, I'm going to see what happens. I'm curious. I'm like, what's going to happen here? So I went into Garuda Extreme, and I was not necessarily taking notes, but I was thinking about it. It's like, okay, what's happening? So I was like, alright, so we have Garuda, okay, she's over here, oh, okay, she does her little big cyclone thing, okay, so let's get out of the way of that. And then it's like, okay, she goes in the air, so what's she going to do? Oh, shit, she's going to do Missile Shriek, and she's going to go off to the side, so she shoots one. Continue, same thing. And it's just like, oh, she jumps in the air again. Oh, she does Missile Shriek from the other side, so it's basically a clock. You know, I was taking notes and mental notes in my head of everything that was happening in the fight. And I was actually one of the first people that I know of to think, okay, that line, I was like, okay, how can we deal with this? How do we deal with this line in Garuda Extreme? I was like, alright, well, Garuda and Tirada are tethered. And then Tirada is connected to Soprana. Soprana's connected to Garuda. Okay, so let's try this. Let's take the ads and separate them from Garuda. Okay, Garuda's taking no damage, and these two aren't taking more damage. Okay, so let's try the other one. Let's take Soprana, keep her with Garuda, and pull out Tirada. And it's like, okay. And then we're kind of moving that, we're messing with that a little bit, and I started to notice, like, oh, there's vulnerability stacks. So it's like, okay. And as that line get further and further apart, it's like, oh shit, that's getting less and less and less. So that means you need to take the ads and stretch them all the way across the map as far as you can in order to minimize that vulnerability. And I think that's what actively people need to do. In a duty finder, you're trying to figure it out. You know, people who have cleared the fight, if they're looking to farm, they need to go join a farm party. They need to go into Party Finder, they need to go into a Party Finder, they need to join it, make it, whatever, and try to get people in there. If people don't want to do it, that's on them and their server. You know, if they run on more populated servers, then they probably won't have that issue. Or whatever the hindrance is. Maybe people just don't want to do it. But the attitude of having Duty Finder as this be-all of, like, you're expected to know absolutely everything in a Duty Finder is completely backwards. So, friend, that's my opinion. Hey, King Reaper, what's up? And everyone, welcome back, Kerrigan! Kerrigan mentioned that Steps of Faith, Ultima Hard Mode, and Levy EX. Steps of Faith is really organized. Ballad, Ballad is cancerous. Ballad's pretty bad. It really